a cornerstone of global stability, once revered as the Atlantic Alliance, a partnership solidified through conflict, mutual reliance, and collective security. But examine the situation today. Fissures are appearing. Why are steadfast allies exhibiting hesitation towards Washington? Why are European leaders, previously aligned closely with the White House, now publicly questioning America's global standing? This isn't merely about policy disagreements. It reflects a deeper current of apprehension, eroding trust, and an increasing conviction that Europe must chart its own course. The world stage has seen numerous significant shifts recently, and we need to delve into them. From Berlin to Brussels, political figures are redefining their positions and commitments. What has fundamentally altered the landscape? It involves fear, mistrust, and a burgeoning realization that Europe might need to secure its own interests independently. Before we dive deeper into these complex dynamics, if you appreciate analyses that go beyond surface-level headlines, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the like button. Your support is crucial for helping us continue to bring you these insights. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our global audience. Let's explore the 10 European nations that are subtly, yet undeniably, distancing themselves from Donald Trump's potential influence in 2025, and consider the broader implications for international relations. Number 10. Germany. Have you ever sensed that a close companion, someone you've relied on for years, is gradually creating distance? The uneasy silences, the slower responses, the subtle coolness. You perceive the shift, even if it's hard to pinpoint concrete evidence. Now, amplify that feeling onto the international stage. This mirrors the current dynamic with Germany. You might be taken aback by the extent of their divergence. Once the very foundation of the US-Europe partnership, Germany is now actively crafting its own defense strategy, largely independent of Washington's direction. NATO remains, but the underlying sentiment has changed. In fact, early in 2025, German officials explicitly endorsed calls for strategic autonomy, advocating for a Europe capable of standing on its own militarily. They are also pouring billions into alternative energy collaborations with France and China, methodically reducing dependencies previously shared with the United States. Why this redirection? When Germany observed the US retracting from global commitments, they didn't simply wait. They proactively began planning for a different future. While not immediately obvious on the surface, Germany is already charting a new course. Please make sure to watch this video until the end, as we will provide concluding thoughts and summaries. Number 9. France. How do you react when the very ground you stand on feels unstable? Some might become paralyzed, others might flee. France, however, chose a different path. They began constructing their own foundation. As the United States navigates abrupt shifts in its foreign policy, France has established its own set of guidelines. President Macron's administration recently characterized America's tariff-based diplomacy as unrelenting economic tremors. One might assume allies would remain synchronized, but the reality is different. France is now spearheading efforts to establish a distinct European defense capability, not merely modifying NATO, but potentially supplanting its function entirely. In trade, France has intensified new bilateral agreements with nations across Africa, India, and Brazil. In March 2025, they finalized a €12 billion technology agreement that completely circumvents American platforms. Even more striking is the palpable quietude between the French and American presidencies. Meetings that once exuded cordiality now feel colder than a Parisian winter. Still believe France is merely following America's lead? Reconsider. Number 8. Ireland. What transpires when your most formidable ally transforms into your largest economic uncertainty? For a nation small yet globally significant like Ireland, this isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's a lived reality demanding daily navigation. We're discussing Ireland, and the rapidity of change there is startling. This is a country whose economic vitality, particularly in pharmaceuticals and technology, was once profoundly linked to U.S. trade. Any economic fluctuation in Washington would send immediate shockwaves through Dublin. However, 2025 presents a contrasting narrative. Following President Trump's announcement of another potential wave of global tariffs, this time targeting the pharmaceutical sector, Ireland didn't succumb to panic. It adapted. With over €100 billion in pharmaceutical exports potentially affected, Irish officials promptly initiated confidential discussions with EU counterparts and Asian markets. These discrete dialogues are evolving into strategic realignments. Why? Because when you grasp that your economic core could be the next casualty in a global trade conflict, you don't passively await the impact. Trust in the predictability of American diplomacy has eroded, and once that trust diminishes, nations instinctively begin securing their own positions. You start reinforcing your own defenses. Still convinced Ireland relies solely on America? They aren't just relying, they are adapting and learning. Number 7. Portugal. When geopolitical instability brews, some nations seek refuge, while others construct their own beacons of stability. This latter approach precisely describes Portugal's recent actions. You might not anticipate such decisive moves from this nation, but they are quietly distancing themselves from the American sphere of influence. In early 2025, Portuguese defense officials surprised analysts by publicly evaluating European-manufactured fighter jets as alternatives to the American F-35. This choice wasn't driven by cost considerations, but by confidence. Confidence in forging a future less dependent on Washington's fluctuating stances. Portugal has historically championed diplomacy and transatlantic cooperation. Yet, in recent months, even their renowned patience has been tested. The nation is adjusting its foreign policy, prioritizing alliances in the Southern Hemisphere. Renewed trade negotiations are underway across Africa and Latin America, regions the U.S. has not prioritized significantly in recent years. Furthermore, Lisbon recently convened a private summit with several EU countries, focusing intently on a critical issue: contingency planning should U.S. support for NATO become conditional once more. This isn't standard diplomatic practice. It's preparation for a potentially altered geopolitical future. Portugal's new Technology Innovation Fund, valued at over €2.5 billion, is channeling investments into projects designed to bypass reliance on American platforms, encompassing cloud computing, AI integration, and even green infrastructure. All are being engineered to function without needing explicit U.S. endorsement. Yet perhaps the most telling indicator is the quietness of the shift. No grand announcements, no major headlines, just discreet exits, like a guest departing a gathering early to avoid potential awkwardness. Think Portugal is simply mirroring the rest of Europe? No, they are meticulously drawing their own map. Number 6. Switzerland. You recognize a significant shift is underway when even the most historically neutral actors begin to take sides. It's akin to observing someone who consistently avoids disputes suddenly step forward and voice a strong opinion. This is precisely the dynamic unfolding in Switzerland, and the boldness of their actions might surprise you. For generations, Switzerland maintained a quiet neutrality between the world's major powers, concentrating on banking, diplomacy, and staying detached from international conflicts. But in 2025, that long-held silence was broken decisively with a firm rejection of a proposed U.S. free trade agreement. Why? Because Swiss legislators, especially those from the Social Democratic Party, perceive the U.S. as attempting to fragment European unity through economic pressure tactics like tariffs. This isn't mere conjecture, it's documented in parliamentary records. In February, a prominent parliamentary committee explicitly cited Trump's potential return to aggressive trade policies as a direct threat to European cohesion and consequently halted the negotiations. Consider the implications. A neutral nation spurning economic ties not due to economic factors, but strategic concerns. But the shift goes beyond trade. Switzerland isn't just opting out of alignment with the U.S., they are actively opting into closer ties with Europe. For the first time in many years, Bern is advancing measures for tighter economic harmonization with the EU, even reopening discussions about aligning Swiss digital standards with European frameworks rather than American systems. This isn't just about policy, it reflects public sentiment as well. Polls from early 2025 indicate that 68% of Swiss citizens now favor closer cooperation with the EU bloc, a substantial increase from previous years. The trust that once underpinned US-Swiss economic diplomacy is diminishing, and it's not being actively restored. One might assume a neutral country would avoid creating disturbances, but Switzerland's era of quiet neutrality is demonstrably over. Number 5. Belgium. Occasionally, the very core of Europe begins to resonate with a new cadence, and if one isn't attuned, the crucial warning signals can be missed. Observe Belgium more closely. This isn't merely another European nation. It hosts NATO's headquarters, serves as the hub for countless EU initiatives, and has historically been a staunch supporter of the Transatlantic partnership. Yet, in 2025, this steadfast belief is facing unprecedented challenges. In January, Belgian leaders openly expressed apprehension about whether the United States would continue to be a reliable guarantor of European defense. This isn't standard diplomatic phrasing. It signifies a nation contemplating the possibility that long-standing alliances might become unreliable. Behind the scenes, Belgian officials have been investigating methods to transfer more defense infrastructure under EU-led programs, without depending on Washington's next strategic decision. The situation extends further. Belgium's economy heavily relies on trade with the US, particularly in chemicals and aerospace. However, since the emergence of the latest US tariff threats, Belgian exporters have initiated the rerouting of logistics chains towards Asia and the Middle East, diversifying rapidly. These are subtle maneuvers with potentially significant consequences. But here's what might be most impactful. Internal polling from March 2025 reveals that only 39% of Belgians retain confidence that the US will consistently uphold Europe's defense interests over the coming decade. This represents a dramatic decline from just 3 years prior, and it fundamentally alters the geopolitical equation. Belgium isn't reacting out of hostility, but out of pragmatism, preparing for a future where traditional alliances may not provide the same level of security. When the bedrock begins to fracture, even the most loyal allies start assessing alternative pathways and securing emergency options. Still assume Belgium is fully committed to the transatlantic ideal. The evidence suggests a significant recalibration is underway. Number 4. Denmark. Some nations amplify their rhetoric when international tensions escalate. Others operate with quiet resolve, leaving observers to decipher their intentions. Lately, however, one small nation has moved beyond speculation and initiated concrete actions. That nation is Denmark, and the extent of its strategic shift in 2025, aiming to forge a future less reliant on the American sphere, might be startling. Just last month, Danish officials put forth a comprehensive policy proposal to elevate defense expenditure by 1.2% of GDP. But the crucial detail lies in the allocation. None of these funds are earmarked for US-led defense projects. Instead, the resources are being channeled directly into collaborative Nordic and EU strategic initiatives. What prompted this change? It revolves around consistency. After enduring years of fluctuating US policies regarding climate, trade, and defense, Copenhagen has started questioning the long-term reliability of American alignment. Is depending on the US still a prudent strategy? And they are not alone in this assessment. Internal reports from the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs express concerns about strategic unpredictability, particularly in scenarios where Europe might need to act independently without guaranteed US support. This concern isn't confined to defense. In March 2025, Denmark surprised many by fast-tracking legislation for AI infrastructure specifically designed for collaboration with European and Asian tech networks, effectively bypassing traditional American platforms like Google Cloud and AWS. This isn't merely a technological preference, it's a strategic declaration. Perhaps the most significant shock, however, came from the Danish populace. Recent surveys indicate that only 42% of Danes now trust the US to consistently protect European interests. This marks the lowest level of confidence recorded since 2003. Consider this. A country that once strongly favored transatlantic loyalty is now prioritizing self-reliance and regional partnerships, looking inward and eastward. The next time someone suggests Denmark is simply maintaining the status quo, remind them that the definition of security looks markedly different in 2025. Number 3. Estonia. When your immediate neighbor is a global superpower with a history of assertive actions, your foreign policy isn't about political maneuvering, it's about ensuring survival. This is the perspective of a nation that has evolved into one of Europe's most strategically vigilant countries. We are talking about Estonia. But even here, trust in America is not what it once was. Estonia has traditionally been one of the most staunchly pro-American voices in Eastern Europe, particularly concerning defense matters. However, in 2025, a subtle but significant transformation is occurring, rooted in apprehension. Estonian leaders recently initiated efforts to enhance local defense manufacturing, not solely for self-sufficiency, but because, in their assessment, Washington's reliability can no longer be implicitly guaranteed. This insight comes directly from a classified Estonian National Security Committee memorandum, leaked in February. The candor of the assessment was striking, and the implications deepen. Estonia is collaborating behind the scenes with Finland, Latvia, and Poland to establish a Baltic-led rapid response force, engineered to operate effectively with or without NATO's immediate backing. This isn't merely a contingency plan. It signifies the creation of an alternative strategic framework. Technologically, Estonia is also making quiet strides away from reliance on U.S. platforms. The nation recently finalized a cyber defense agreement with Japan and Germany, establishing what one analyst termed a firewall without a U.S. plug. For a country previously targeted by major cyber attacks, this move is not symbolic. It's a critical measure for survival. Perhaps the most surprising element is the shift in public opinion. In a nation where pro-American sentiment has historically been exceptionally high, support for complete dependence on the U.S. military has fallen by 19% since the beginning of the year. The populace isn't becoming antagonistic. They are becoming more circumspect. Estonia continues to value its relationship with the U.S., but in 2025, that relationship is increasingly complemented by a robust Plan B. Number 2. Poland. There exists a distinct difference between standing alongside an ally and standing alone when that ally potentially wavers. In 2025, one of America's historically closest partners is confronting this distinction directly. That nation is Poland. For years, it has been among the most vocal proponents of a strong U.S. military presence in Europe. Indeed, Poland has hosted thousands of American soldiers, lauded NATO cooperation, and even dedicated military installations in honor of former U.S. presidents. But recently, the tone has shifted. Beneath the surface of loyalty, there's a growing sense of urgency and quiet frustration. In early 2025, Polish leaders authorized a €14 billion expansion of domestic weapons production, significantly reinforcing their commitment to independent capabilities. Observers within Poland are referring to this as strategic insurance against potential American disengagement. This isn't merely about defense. It's about preparing for a scenario where communication lines with Washington might falter. Consider the trade aspect as well. Poland is actively moving away from excessive reliance on single partners. New energy agreements were signed with Norway and South Korea this year, indicating a long-term strategy focused on diversified security and economic partnerships. And what about the Polish people? Polls conducted in April 2025 revealed that while 65% of Poles still hold U.S. relations in high regard, nearly half now believe Europe must prepare for a future where American support could be unreliable or entirely absent. This represents a remarkable shift in public perception for one of Washington's most steadfast allies. Poland hasn't severed its ties, but it is no longer exclusively dependent on them. It is forging something new, enhanced self-reliance, and strengthened regional bonds. Number 1. United Kingdom. What course do you take when your long-standing partner repeatedly alters the fundamental rules of engagement? For one particular nation, the answer is straightforward. Begin drafting your own rulebook. That nation is the United Kingdom, and the quiet determination with which it is reshaping its global strategy in 2025 might be surprising. This is a country that once proudly proclaimed the special relationship, but this year, that term is noticeably less prevalent. Why? Because following Brexit, After years of contending with fluctuating U.S. foreign policies, and amidst growing doubts about NATO's future trajectory, Britain is diversifying its strategic investments. In March, the UK initiated the AUKUS Five Eyes Economic Alliance, a financial and technological partnership involving Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Japan. Is anyone obviously absent from this core group? Indeed, the United States was not positioned as the primary leader in this initiative. This isn't just a policy adjustment, it signifies a fundamental shift in direction. Concurrently, the UK's own Defence White Paper, published this year, details a lessened reliance on U.S. military logistics, favoring instead increased deployments in the Indo-Pacific region. Furthermore, British intelligence services are developing new secure communication and data systems designed explicitly to reduce dependence on American infrastructure defaults. But perhaps the most telling evidence lies within the halls of Parliament itself. Lawmakers from across the political spectrum are increasingly employing terms like global agility and post-Atlantic strategy. A decade ago, such language would have seemed almost defiant. Today, it reflects emerging policy. And the British public? A recent survey indicated that only 38% of Britons trust the current U.S. administration to consistently act in the UK's best interest. For a nation that has stood firmly with America in every major 21st century conflict, this represents a profound emotional recalibration. The UK isn't severing connections, but it's no longer looking solely westward. It is confidently stepping onto its own path, forging new alliances, and redefining its global role. Europe is undergoing a transformation, subtle, strategic, and occurring more rapidly than many recognize. From Ireland to the UK, Germany to Estonia, nations once deeply intertwined with Washington are constructing their own futures. Sometimes these paths run parallel to the US. Increasingly, they diverge. What does this signify for the global balance of power, for long-standing alliances, and for navigating the next international crisis? We are witnessing these changes unfold in real time. If you found these insights into Europe's quiet strategic shifts valuable, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with others who might still believe the world's geopolitical alignments are immutable. They are not. And trust us, this unfolding narrative is far from over. It's truly just beginning.